And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 14 of the Tech Poutine. We're in the pre-show right now, just getting everything ready as people come in, and we make sure that we're all sounding good. And Bueller, hello, hello,
Bueller.
You know, after all the issues I've had this week with recording and audio, if this goes well, if this goes normal, then that's fine. That's great. I had some issues recording yesterday. I think my GPU in my system was causing it to stutter, but it felt like the old stutter days when SSDs didn't have trim.
Huh. Interesting.
I'm pretty sure my chassis is the PCIe to where you screw it in isn't 90 degrees. Yeah, so even though it's locked into the motherboard, I don't know. It turns out big GPUs have issues. Which it makes me want to go back to a horizontal system.
Turn it sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you have to figure out how your desk works with a sideways PC. I don't know. Silverstone usually has a bunch of cases that are pretty good for that.
Yeah. I'll be honest, if I could just get a that we'll get into it, but HP now has a Strix Halo little 3-liter thing. If I could just have one of those on my desk, I'd be happy.
Oh yeah, no, there's some interesting story behind that. And yeah, so we're now back from CES. For those of you who don't know, CES is the biggest annual trade show of the year, as put by Linus Sebastian on Jimmy Fallon. If you saw that,
I didn't actually.
He basically said anything with a chip or a battery in it, chances are it's at CES. Most of it is terrible.
Yeah.
Most of it is industrial waste. Terrible
or for human pleasure. Let's put it that way.
No. The AVN show is a few weeks later. It used to be the same week as CES, but because they had issues of representatives of prominent tech company going across the corridor to the AVN company, they had to stop that. So it's I think they officially said 142,000 this year, 142,100. But that's just of people who officially bought the ticket. Most of CES is done in the hotels around the strip. So I didn't. If you didn't go into the Venetian area or the show floor, you didn't need a ticket. And there's plenty of people around who didn't do that. I always thought it was nearer 200,000, but apparently pre-pandemic it peaked at 175. But this year is still a slight increase over last year by a few thousand. Apparently we're streaming the same time as the full nerd. I should have known that. This is generally their time slot. Unfortunately, I'm busy the next couple of days. So, and the reason why we didn't do a tech routine during the show is I'm still recovering from illness. It's the first night I arrived Sunday night. We had dinner with friends, with other content creators, and one of them was just getting over something. As in, it was the day before was his last day. Clearly, I caught something, and then because of the super dry air of Las Vegas, it made it 10 times worse. So I spent most of the week, excuse me, after the keynotes, after the big important meetings, I spent most of the week in bed until I flew home, and then spent another couple of days in bed. So it's late, but we're here, and let's bring up this comment. How many at CES are regular consumers versus tech professionals or press? CES is all tech professionals. You have to be in the industry to get a pass. So you have to be engineer related to a company in tech, or work for a company in tech, or press. You can't just be a casual and buy a ticket. I think it's somewhere like $250, $300, isn't it? For just like a day pass?
It's $350 for a day pass, and then there's a whole bunch added on to it.
Yeah. They will do tours, and you can pay for tours around the show, and they'll take you to specific companies. I mean, to me, it sounds almost all a scam, but I guess for people like us, we know who we want to see, and we're quite happy just to roam the show floor, whereas there are people who are happy to be guided around companies they don't know. And I don't know, it feels a bit weird, but that's how they make their money. And so this is the CES after party, basically. We're going to cover the three main companies that we usually cover at these things: Intel, AMD, Nvidia, and then also a few other things that we saw. And due to the way the slides are, we're actually just going to go in alphabetical order, because that's how it works. And then we're also going to talk about a few things we didn't see that we wanted to, or a few things that have to come out. Excuse me, I'm gonna be coughing. But in craft computing style, I have a jam roly poly sour. That's what my drink of the show is going to be. 4.3% modern sour beer from Vault City.
Coffee.
Yeah, it's a lot earlier in the day for you. I also have a nice fruit salad. So there we go. Balance. Everything in moderation. I hope everybody has had a good new year. Even with everything going on, it's for us. It's just starts off with travel and deadlines, and we're what, day 14 of the year, and I'm already 15 days behind. So I know George has had a few articles go up. What did you posted an interview today?
Yesterday. Well, it might be today. No, it would have been yesterday for you. Yeah, interview with Mahesh Suramani from AMD, AMD Senior Fellow. Was a very good interview. And then
Mahesh is really nice to talk to, because he can get deep in the weeds technically, but he's also got the business sense. So he knows how to work with the OEMs, but he also knows the fundamentals of what's required in the chip design. So definitely go check that out. I posted this morning a Q&A with the Marvell CEO, Matt Murphy. So that was Industry Analyst Day a few weeks ago, just before Christmas, and just did an audio recording and a transcription. So that's there as well, over at more-more.com. If you want to go subscribe to George's channel, Chips and Cheese. Links are in the description.
We just hit 2K, so 2K subs. So woo! It's not 100K, but still.
I'm pretty sure since you started the channel, you've gained more subs than I have, just because of my regular posting. I've got like 6 videos in the pipe in some form that are almost done that we need to finish. Also doing, I've got a small project on the back burner as well. That will come to light in a few days, so we'll cover that.
I don't even know what that is. So
exactly. Ha 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 ha. So with that, let's get this show on the road. Let's start with Tech Poutine, episode 14. Welcome, everyone, to your sometimes weekly, sometimes not show on tech news. I am Ian, also known as Potato.
And I am George, also known as Cheese.
And if we'd have a guest, they would be the gravy, hence the Tech Poutine aspect of our show. George and I, we like to talk about silicon, chips, architecture, performance. And so that's what you're going to get if you listen to us. This show, we're going to focus on CES. If you didn't hear during the pre-show, this is the biggest trade show for technology, for semiconductors, for devices, for gadgets of the year. 140,000 people officially bought tickets, but somewhere probably around 200,000 attended, because you don't need a ticket to have a meeting. We saw keynotes from Intel, AMD, Nvidia, and would you believe it, Delta had a keynote as well, an official keynote at the Sphere.
Yep. And not Delta fans, Delta the airline.
Yes. So one, what would Delta be announcing at a show like CES? And two, why did I see a queue of 4,000 people just standing to get a ticket the day
there was
before?
a concert too.
Oh God, yeah. Okay.
Someone that I don't remember who. There was a concert in the Sphere.
That reminds me of the time I went to the launch of the Samsung Galaxy 4 in the UK. It was a big press event, but then after the event, they had a DJ set by will.i.am, which probably cost best part of $250,000. And I'm thinking, I remember leaving that show thinking, you could have given everyone of the press your new laptop, your new phone, and your new smartwatch for what it cost to put this together. And I bet you that would have been a better ROI. So, okay, Delta had a big keynote, but we didn't go to that one because, well, airlines don't talk chips. So let's start off with AMD. And I have some slides to go through. Let's see if I can get this to work. And the reason why they have a big white border is because this platform doesn't allow me to just upload images. I have to upload a PDF of images. So hopefully they're all rotated the right way. So let's start off with AMD. We've got a few things to talk about with AMD. So we're going to go through them in order with how the keynote went. And the keynote was hosted by Jack Huhn, who is the SVP of AMD Consumer and Gaming or something similar. So no Lisa Su. She was over at the El Capitan commencement in Livermore that week, and also doing plenty of customer meetings and stuff. But because they decided to focus this show specifically on the gaming, they had the guy who leads the gaming, which is Jack. And then underneath him, you have people like David McAfee and Frank Azor and whoever. So first up is the launch of the new X3D. So Ryzen 7 9800 X3D is widely being touted as the best gaming chip on the market. This is the update to that. So that was an 8-core design. This is a 16-core design with Vcache, up to 5.7 gigahertz, 170 watts TDP. Though there has been some criticism of this part. Have you heard about this?
Single CCD with Vcache?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with what AMD has its processors like, I'm not going to be able to find mine in any decent time, am I? No. You'll see a picture later. It's a centralized IO die with 2 core chiplets. Is it the first generation of X3D? They put the Vcache on both. So essentially, you had. Oh, so
the first generation of Vcache came with Zen 3, and it was a single CCD only. There was no dual CCD version of the first generation of Vcache. Second generation of Vcache, only one of the dies had Vcache, the other one did not. That trend has continued with Zen 5. The dual CCD chips only have a single Vcache die.
So the only way to get an all CCDs having all Vcache is to go get an Epic.
Mm-hmm.
Though with Zen 5, instead of putting the cache on the top, they've now put it on the bottom for thermal reasons to drive higher frequency. But you're still going to have. The idea is that over time, the issues surrounding having non-homogeneous core designs or having a heterogeneous core design filter them out. Basically, you want the gaming to run on the Vcache and you want the non-gaming to run on the non-Vcache. If I can go forward one slide, they're saying that this is the best 16-core desktop processor for content creation. So they're pitching it very much at content creators because the 8-core for gamers, 16-core is going to be for the more higher end, the prosumers. And yeah, we're seeing against the Core Ultra 9 285K, Intel's Arrow Lake, that we're getting 1% in Cinebench, plus 7% in Blender, plus 33% in 7-zip. And Puget Bench, which is the more real world workload, is plus 47%. So they didn't. Did they do the full? Did they list the full 20 apps? Did you see the full 20 apps at all?
Let me go check the slide deck.
It's fine. It's as always. AMD usually does a good job in performance analysis, but obviously what you show on stage is sometimes pick and choose. And here are the two SKUs that are going to fall under this: the 16 core and the 12 core, 5.7 gigahertz and 5.5 gigahertz max boost. So that's obviously a single thread. Though I suspect that these will happily do all core around 5. And then, yeah, TDP 170, which is starting to become the new norm for AMD's high end. On the 16 core, that's how you drive a little bit of extra frequency at the top. I always found that Zen 5 and even Zen 4, to be honest, if you set it to 75 watts, actually is really efficient. You still hit a good mid 4 gigahertz frequency. So we'll see. Again, coming March 2025.
And just for clarification, those max boosts are on the non-Vcache die, not on the Vcache die. They did not release the clock speed of the Vcache die, so that will have to be borne out in testing.
Just to highlight a couple of little sections here. Why has AMD stopped using the term APU?
They haven't.
They kind of they haven't, but this isn't an APU.
Yeah.
Actually, no. It does have 2 CUs on it.
It does. It technically makes it APU, but it's not. Those CUs are really more for either display out or just basic, like throw it into a Dell or HP workstation and you have some sort of graphics output.
Yeah, it gives you an encode and decode pipeline.
Yeah.
So next up, announced was Fire Range HX3D. So this is what I was saying with the 2 CCDs and 1 IO die. This is essentially the same thing.
So this is desktop chips repackaged into a BGA or ball grid array format and then put into laptops at a reduced TDP.
So yeah, it's we've said here it's likely targeted around the 50 watt range, though because these essentially go into desktop replacement, there's a chance that could go higher.
So target for these is 45 to 75 watts. And there's no LPDDR support on these. It's just DDR. So it's
let's say rebadged desktop. But obviously you expect it to be slightly bin for efficiency. Yeah. But is this the first Vcache design in mobile?
No. So last generation Dragon Range did have that in like one laptop by Asus. I don't remember what the laptop was, but it was the 9745 HX3D.
Yeah, this is when we're going to get into silly names, because I've seen a name going around like 9955 HX3D.
That's the name.
Is it? Is there not?
Yes. Yes, that's the name. It's the 9955 HX3D. And then there's the 9955 HX, the 98 and the 9850 HX, which is 12 cores.
I'm pretty sure that's a secret passcode in the Necronomicon. We'll see. AMD's naming has a scheme, which is sometimes better than most. It's a discussion we keep having with AMD every time, and sometimes they run things by me, and sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't. But next up, after the Vcache, is Krackan Point, spelt Krackan, rather than the traditional way everybody else spells Kraken for some reason. This is just AMD Ryzen AI, the notebook chips that are built for Copilot. but instead of it just being Ryzen 9, these are Ryzen 7 and Ryzen 5. We're pretty sure these are just binned down chips. Or at least...
Actually, so I looked at, so there's a fairly blurry image I have, but it does appear to be a different die.
Okay, so they are actually optimizing it on the die level. So that means there'll be power advantages just by having smaller silicon. That's good. But this will have onboard graphics and the NPU. So the whole point of the reason for Strix Point existing, the AMD Ryzen AI chips, is that they support Copilot Plus because they have an NPU of 50 TOPS. If you're unaware of what Copilot Plus is, it's the new feature by Microsoft that enables AI, and in order to get the validation, you need to have at least 40 TOPS, which is a measure of peak theoretical performance on your NPU, which is your specific AI engine. This one has 50 TOPS. This one has some TOPS. That's a Copilot Plus. This is Lunar Lake. This is Ryzen 9. Ryzen AI 9. I told them AI 9 is it's a mouthful, but Krackan Point just fills in the lower price point parts. So if you're in the mood for getting, if AI and Copilot Plus is a thing you want on the device, it's now coming down to smaller price points. Qualcomm also launched a chip to make it go down into the $600 notebook price point for their Copilot Plus as well. And yet this is a better version of that slide, just showing Krackan Point. That's simply because it's a silicon change. And now this is the money. This is the one we all wanted to see. It looks, if you know what the competition is doing and you look at that, you may think, oh look, on board LPDDR. It's not quite, but okay. It is.
You know what this looks like? And people are going to get, this looks like Vega 64 in like a package shot. But it's not.
I mean, that isn't HBM. Those are core chiplets, which makes it look like the almost that design, right? But instead you have a much larger I/O die in the middle, and it's packaged slightly differently. Now, think of what products each company has in the market. Who is, question for you, George, who is AMD's biggest semi-custom customer, or the two biggest?
I mean, Sony and Microsoft.
Sony and Microsoft. What do they make?
Consoles.
What is part of a console design that makes it fit for that market?
Big iGPU. And
big GPU, big memory, and some cores. How many generations, probably since the early 2000s, have we requested that the people who supply chips to consoles provide something similar in the consumer market that can run Windows?
At least since the initial launch of the Xbox One.
Yeah.
And the PS4.
I mean, I can bring this out just because it's close to...
Oh boy, what's he grabbing today?
Do you remember this?
Is that the Xbox Series X on a motherboard?
Isn't it the 360?
No.
Or is it the 1S or something? Either way,
maybe it's the 1S chip.
This was the nearest we got, which was from a Chinese vendor selling systems that didn't really have the GPU didn't work, if I remember correctly, or it shipped with the GPU.
So the GPU was technically supposed to be fused off, but some people managed to get it to work by sheer force of will.
Yeah. But the point is, we haven't had a proper console chip for the consumer market because the general understanding is that the minute you put that into the consumer market, you'll start to cannibalize console sales. However, with the prevalence of handheld devices like the Steam Deck and the Legion Go and the MSI Claw and the whatever the Asus one is called,
the Ally, I think.
Yeah. And all of the GPDs and one players and I'm forgetting some other Chinese companies that are
Nano is pretty prevalent.
Yeah. AMD has decided, screw it, let's build one, and they have, and I want several.
I want the okay.
So we'll get to the images in a second because I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
But the point here is that we have 16 cores, Zen 5 cores, full fat Zen 5 cores.
Mm-hmm.
You have an I/O die with 40 compute units or 20 WGPs. There is an onboard NPU that is Copilot Plus enabled, so it's at least 40 TOPS. And the memory interface is what, 128 gigabytes up to of LPDDR5 or 256?
So it's up to 128 gigabytes of capacity and up to 256 gigabyte per second worth of bandwidth. And those CUs are RDNA 3.5, not RDNA 4.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. I just want to make that clear.
Big ass GPU.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 128 gigs of LP5 at 256 gigs per second memory bandwidth, which is twice anything on the desktop, and twice anything in notebook, pretty much.
For the Windows ecosystem.
For the Windows ecosystem. And it's designed to go in a laptop. It's interesting, right? Because when AMD first showed this to me, they was like, yeah, we definitely think workstation is the market. We've done some market testing. This is workstations where we want to go with this. Prosumer, this is what they want. And me and everybody else in the room said, no, talk about gaming. Talk about this as the ultimate laptop gaming chip. But then you realize that they might cannibalize some of their notebook sales where they have the attach with a discrete GPU, whether it's theirs, Intel's or Nvidia's or whatever that relationship is. Either way, it's something we got really excited about because this is something we've wanted. There is one small flaw in the design. Only 16 lanes of PCIe. But with this chip, you don't need a discrete GPU. The whole point of it is you've got a massive onboard GPU. So take that out of your mind. In my system here, which is my video editing rig, I use one drive as a boot drive. That's an Optane drive. And then I use 4 M.2 SSDs, as a storage space, 16 gigabytes total. That requires a minimum 20 lanes. And this only has 16. So we need M.2 drives to also be higher capacity. 8 gigs is still too expensive. Sorry, but
yeah,
what other pictures do I have here? Okay, so we have Rahul, who's in charge of this product line. He's showing off. We've got close-up pictures of the die, and just so people understand where in the stack this sits, right? It's we have Krackan Point, which you mentioned before, Strix Point, which launched last year. Then this is Strix Halo. Over and above with the name Ryzen AI Max and Ryzen AI Max Plus. So
chat tech left behind is saying low PCIe count will always be a thing on mobile. PCIe 5s suck power like no tomorrow if you want Gen 4 or higher. Yeah, they do. Yeah, so it's not surprising. And 16 lanes, consider you dole it out, let's say 3 M.2s and then 4 for everything else. Or 2 M.2s plus Thunderbolt plus 4 for everything else.
Dango, if you can show me a PCIe 3x16 to 8 NVMe with a PLX chip for 100, let me know. Or at least show me, send me a link or something.
Yeah, put it in because I don't know if the chat will accept links, but yeah.
Or just DM me or whatever. So it's the fact that they're calling it a workstation class chip means I want to put it in a system like a workstation, or at least a small form factor workstation, which means I need I/O, unfortunately. But this benchmark.
This is funny. When I saw this slide, I laughed out loud properly.
Weren't you in the room?
Well, when I saw the pre-brief slides, I laughed.
Oh, so I didn't see this in my pre-brief. But so what this benchmark says is that taking the new Strix Halo Ryzen AI Max Plus against the RTX 4090 24 gig. So at the time, Nvidia's largest card that you can buy, it is 2.2x faster in terms of tokens per second on output. This got in the room, stunned silence. Two people went into shock, and I laughed my head off.
Yeah, I was dying because really what this comes down to is memory capacity. That's what this is. Which you could argue is fair, but yeah.
Well, hang on a second. If you don't follow what this means in a benchmark context, let me lay it out. So Llama 3.1 is Meta's series of Llama large language models. 70 billion means 70 billion parameters. And at 8-bit, that means it requires a minimum of 70 gigabytes of memory. Now, they've got Q4 here. That doesn't mean that it's converted to 4-bit. That just means that's the quality, and quality is a scale, I think, between 0 and 7. So it's the mid-quality Llama 3.1 70 billion parameter model. I presume running on the GPU. It'd be a bit, or is it running on NPU? I don't know. Actually,
it would run on the GPU almost certainly.
But the thing is, because this chip can have 128 gigabytes of memory, you can fit the whole model in memory at once. With the RTX 4090, because it only has 24 gigabytes of GPU memory, you have to store some of the weights out into DRAM. And therefore, when it's needed, you need to do a DRAM, your CPU DRAM to DDR conversion back and forth, which is really, really slow. This is why when you're doing AI models, the model size essentially needs to stay inside the memory. It's like having page files. If any of you remember page files, if you run out of DRAM, it would start to use your hard drive as excess memory. In this case, it's using the CPU DRAM as excess capacity over the GPU memory, and that's why it's really slow. Now, I should do a proper video on this, but the reason why I got a shock is because if you don't know that, that seems really cool. The thing is, if you have a RTX 4090 with only 24 gigabytes of VRAM, chances are you're not focusing on the 70 billion parameter models, which require 70 gigabytes of memory. The benchmark is correct. However, it's a non-standard use and non-intended use. It'd be like, yes, you could use your hypercar to go to the shops, but it's still going to be the same experience as taking a bus.
So here's the thing. I partly agree with you. And the reason why I say that is I know people who have bought M4 Pros and M4 Maxes explicitly for the memory capacity to do AI inferencing. So is that outside of the realm of possibility for a chip like Strix Halo? No. So is this a fair benchmark on the 4090? No. But is this a fair test for that chip in the AI space? Yes.
Yeah, it's ultimately you probably should compare it to the M4 because that's arguably nearest.
Yeah, and I see Mike in the chat saying, "Is Halo going to have unified memory? The HP ZBook Ultra G1A seems to have it similar to digits." Okay, I'm going to get on my soapbox here. Almost every APU in existence has unified memory. From every Intel CPU since time immemorial, since Sandy Bridge, has had unified memory. Can the GPU point to a pointer in system RAM, essentially? If yes, it's unified RAM. It all accesses the same. Now, do certain chips have a dedicated allocation? Sure, but that's just saying, hey, I've reserved this bit for me, but I can still access the rest of it.
It's minimum.
That's the thing that's been a thing since forever. So yes. Will it have unified memory? Yes.
So because you can have 120 gigabytes, you can set in a BIOS a minimum allocation of 64. Mm-hmm. That's actually the limit. However, you need more than 64 to run a 70 billion parameter model. So it just says, I'm going to take another 8 gigabytes or so out of the rest.
Well, no. So
it does it at runtime.
No. So the system, that's actually more an OS thing. The OS will usually cap the GPU out at half of the total RAM capacity of the system.
You can set it to 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 gigabytes.
Yes. You can separately allocate up to 96 gigs for solely the GPU.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that's different than unified.
Yeah.
This drives me up the wall.
Unified is to do with things like zero memory copy and
yes. And what's funny is if you look at things like MI300A, it actually doesn't allocate to the GPU. Ideally, what it does is that it allocates all to the CPU, and then the GPU can access that memory. Which is exactly how Halo and most other APUs and Intel CPUs and whatever works. Sorry, this is just me on my soapbox because it drives me up the wall.
Yeah. I just got a spam email saying, NVIDIA cooperation information. Hi, my name is Karen and I work for PR at NVIDIA. Yeah, it's from a .az.sk, which is known for being spammy. Interesting, it happened during this live stream. So here are the SKUs for the Ryzen AI Max for Strix Halo. Available Q1 2025. I think the sales embargo for the Asus Flow Z13, it comes up first, and then we have the HP system, which we'll show in a second, and then the HP laptop as well.
Yep. There's actually an extra SKU that's not shown here. That's for so AMD has the Ryzen Pro series of that's essentially comparison to the vPro.
The commercials.
Yeah, so there's actually an additional SKU that's not shown here. That's 6 cores, 4.9 gigahertz, 22 megabytes of cache, 16 CUs, and the same CTDPs.
So question here, I was going through this and I thought, okay, 80 megabytes cache for the 16 core, 76 megabytes cache for the 12 core. With the 40 megabytes cache for the 8 core, that means they must only be one CCD.
Yep.
Huh, rather than 2 4-core CCDs. Interesting.
And then for the 6 core, what they've done is that I bet what they've done is have the L3. So it's only 16 megs of L3 instead of 32.
Yeah. I think that they did that before, I think, with Zen 3 or 4 or something.
Yeah.
But this is what the chip looks like in person. This is one of my photos. Hopefully it comes out okay. You can tell it's a bit more advanced packaging than the standard Ryzen desktop CPUs, but looks fancy. And this is the desktop system it's going to be in. That is the size, just bigger than a Coke can. It's probably as big as my beer. which is pretty neat.
It's just a little guy. It's so adorable.
The thing is, that's actually not an optimized solution. I was speaking with AMD, and they said the problem that they've had with this chip is that the OEM partners don't want to design a new chassis for it, and they're thinking this is going to compete with our, Intel plus discrete GPU systems, like the A4000, the single slot GPU workstation cards. And so they already have chassis for those. So they turn around and say, we want to put it in one of those. The thing is, the chassis that size is way overkill for this chip. And that's this chassis. That chassis is about half the depth. It's about twice the depth it needs to be.
But here's the thing. It's still tiny for what it is.
Yes,
and
I know.
I bet you it's going to run quiet.
But it could be tinier. It could be literally half.
Yes, but still, it's just a little guy. It's doing its best. It's adorable.
It's and we saw these and it's like, when can we get one? If we can get the top SKU with 128 gigs, I don't necessarily care about storage. I'll provide my own. 800
for this,
or do you think they'll position it more like 12?
So I know that machine right there is HP starting it at 12.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what GMK is. So GMK is also making a Strix Halo mini PC that's, again, smaller than this one. But I don't know what they're going to be pricing it as, because I know that HP is firmly putting this into the workstation series of things, so you expect a price premium.
It's also a premium part. That means AMD is going to be getting some nice margin on this.
Yeah, probably
some really nice margin. Good for them. Sucks for me. This is. I put it on its side.
I've been bugged by AMD contact. I was like, "Hey, could you maybe send one?" He's like, "I'll try, but no guarantees." I'm like,
"No. With this, it's usually you have to work with the with the OEM."
Yeah.
And as you found out, the same as I have, if you're interested in chips and not systems, the OEMs aren't interested in you.
Yeah.
So. This is the Flow Z13, which is a 2-in-1. I don't think I've actually got a picture of the back here, but the back actually lights up and has some RGB, and you can see into the onto the PCB beneath. But it's what, just over ½ an inch thick?
Yeah, approximately.
Yeah, and about 2.5-3 pounds. With a big battery. It's obviously got vents, because in something like that, to dissipate 40 watts, you need it. But I was playing, I think that's Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah,
absolutely fine. And all the demos they had seemed to be flawless. This is I
was gonna say, if you want to go back, so the pricing for that, no, to the Z13.
Yeah,
the pricing for the Z13 fully kitted out with, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 terabytes of storage and 32 gigs of RAM, is $2,200.
That's probably a 4K OLED screen as well, because
it's a 16p 180 hertz, or 180 hertz. So it's
Uzi's saying it starts at $19.99 for the 12 core and 20. If it's a workstation, do I really need a 180 hertz screen? Again, this is they're going for the gaming
explicitly
market.
For gaming.
Yeah, which is good, but and also HP HP has a traditional clamshell, but I think that's the last in the set that's going to come out, and that's more like end of Q1, I think. This is what the die looks. So this is AI Max Plus Pro. So as George was saying, this is a pro version.
That naming scheme still hurts me in my soul.
Well,
Max Plus Pro.
It's better than Dell's naming scheme change.
Okay, to be honest, that the killing of XPS shocked me, but still, though, I don't know. This name hurts me.
It's for those of you who don't know, Dell has completely abandoned XPS, Inspiron, whatever their other brands were, to do with
Precision,
notebooks.
I think even
Precision,
yeah.
Yeah. So now it's Pro Plus Max, but then you have another dimension which is like Premium or Base Pro Premium.
Yeah.
So it's two dimensions of. So you don't know which dimension is which unless you're actually deep into that ecosystem. Whoever thought of that is clearly used to work for other companies with bad naming schemes as well. So Max Plus just simply means Strix Halo. If it says Max, it's Strix Halo.
Max means Strix Halo. Max Plus means it's the top end SKU of Strix Halo.
Yeah.
Why the plus is there, I don't know.
As another differentiator, because sometimes retailers don't put the numbers next to it. So, like, you'll often see it says Core i7.
Yeah,
Core 7.
okay.
Right.
In that context, it kind of does make sense.
Yeah, so the plus is simply there because retailers don't play nice.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And this is what the back of the chip looks like if you're interested.
BGA goodness.
So the one thing that I need to share, see if I can share this. The one thing we need to talk about is why didn't AMD talk about RDNA 4? So during the pre-briefing, and if you saw anybody else's video or content about this, we were all briefed that AMD's next generation GPU and GPU architecture is ready. And there was going to be 2 or 3 slides during the keynote. The day before, it was taken out of the keynote. However, because everybody was briefed on it, AMD was still happy for everybody's post. But it also meant there were a lot of GPUs at the event of the 9070 and the 9070 XT variety. So before the keynote even had ended, I was already fielding questions from those in the audience. Where the hell was RDNA 4? Especially because it's a new architecture from AMD that is going to be the bedrock of their gaming line going forward. And as always, whether it's Nvidia, whether it's AMD, and now whether it's Intel, whenever there's a new GPU architecture launch, it's going to have all bells and whistles. Immediate thoughts were that, Nvidia's going to launch 50 series later in the day. So they're holding it back. But
they would have known that months in advance.
I know. So
why that never made any sense.
So why was it a last minute decision? I initially thought that it was simply because, hey, this is a new architecture. You give 5 minutes to it at the end of a keynote, you're not doing it justice. Everybody's going to have more questions than they left with. But I was invited along with Tim from Hardware Unboxed and Balin, Dave James from PC Gamer, and Michael from Tech Power Up. I'm not sure exactly what his Tech Power Up name is. We were all invited to a backroom on the record Q&A with David McAfee, who heads up client, and Frank Azor, who heads up client gaming. Basically, they want to tell us exactly how they felt and what the reason was that they decided to pull it last minute. And I've done an article here about what they said. And this is a slide we basically got from AMD in advance, just saying, Q1, all these vendors on board, the normal names that you'd expect. these were the people in the Q&A. I wasn't allowed to post a direct transcription, so this is me just summarizing what was said. And I'm going to read it just verbatim for everybody in the audience if you haven't read it before. David and Frank stated that there will be news from partners about cards at CES. However, the material shown in the pre-brief is the extent of the news right now. That includes the naming scheme and showing off some of the cards. When it comes to the cycle, AMD is close to disclosing information about RDNA 4, the architecture, and the configurations. However, for a couple of reasons, they felt CES was not the right place to give that information. First, the keynote, being an official CES keynote, was limited to 45 minutes. A small aside here, Nvidia got 2 hours because theirs was, they paid for more. Spending only 5 minutes at the end, speaking about RDNA 4, wouldn't do the new architecture justice. AMD felt that the audience would be left with more questions than answers, and in the past, previous graphics architecture launches were met with a day of disclosures rather than 5 minutes. I can testify to being at Polaris and RDNA 2 launches. They were dedicated events, or at least the tech days where people got all the information in advance were dedicated on-site events. I have stories of how I almost missed my plane in Macau after the Polaris event. And funnily enough, the backpacks they gave out at that Polaris event almost 10 years ago now, some people are still using them to this day as their kit bags for shows. But anyway, aside. So yeah, second is the timing. While AMD is close to launch, they're perhaps not as close to when a normal launch event would be. AMD stated that they will be planning a dedicated set of contact points around all the features of RDNA 4 for press and analysts in an official launch soon, but that date isn't today. So I asked, will there be a physical tech day, briefing, announcement, launch? They said they couldn't confirm, but there will at least be a virtual connection, if not a physical one. Though it does feel like it's going to be tend towards more the end of the month or maybe even towards the end of the quarter for this. And so we got to ask questions in the Q&A. I asked if the delay was due to manufacturing or supply, and AMD said no. So I just wanted to get like a simple yes, no. I asked if the delay was due to aligning with Nvidia, what Nvidia might be launching, and AMD also said no, and you'd expect them to say no perhaps to that. But I at least wanted to get it on the record, them saying no to it. Dave from PC Gamer and Tim from Hardware Unboxed asked about the naming alignment scheme, going from 7700 to 9070 for a 7 series, and if this was going to remain consistent going forward. AMD stated that the move to 9070, where the 7 is the third digit, is due to market confusion when comparing against AMD.
Okay. They could have had a much better answer for this, in my opinion. They didn't want to name it the 9700 XT because that conflicted with prior.
They also did say that.
Yeah, because it would. So if you guys remember, 2 decades ago, there was the 9700 series from AMD, including the 9700 Pro, etc. That would have been a better reason, in my opinion.
It's, you know, these things are rarely one thing exactly. But AMD said with a 70 versus 70, users no longer needed a significant investment into the knowledge of the brands to make better like-for-like comparisons, which is fair. We've seen, you know, process node numbers change. We've seen, you know, Ryzen 3579 versus Core i3-579. So, yeah, and this extends to retail and e-tail as well. As for the naming scheme changing too frequently, AMD didn't commit to say it wouldn't change again. They said it does depend what happens in the market and they want to remain agile, but they recognize that changing the brand away from conventional wisdom introduces friction to consumers. They stated that part of desktop Ryzen's success is likely due to the alignment in naming with conventional schemes and that Radeon wants to replicate that success. Tim then asked if the alignment with the 70 versus 70 and others would be based on performance or price. Frank and David both said it would be a combination of both. Performance per dollar needs to be a driving factor, but Frank highlighted that this focus point is enabling a structure and feature set for a given price that makes sense to the user. They reiterated going after the major market or the sub $1,000 market. I then asked about the big positive response to Intel's Battlemage, having a $250 product in the market. It seems to have done well for Intel's brand image. David had positive things to say, highlighting that when you provide the market with a cost-effective option that resonates, it will do well. He then reiterated that Ryzen went on a similar journey, which has helped the brand get to where it is today. Frank stated that when it comes to the Radeon side, AMD has had similar success with specific cards in certain price bands, and it's a case of replicating that for the new generation. Dave from PC Gamer asked about iGPU naming and if Strix Halo and derivatives will follow the same naming as RDNA 4. David and Frank said that beyond Strix Halo hasn't been announced yet, so they're not going to comment. Tim from Hardware Unboxed asked about FSR4, whether that was going to be a 9070 exclusive or a minimum. And this is due to a video cards post that took a slide out of context. David stated there's nothing about FSR4 that makes it exclusive to a specific model. The RDNA 4 updates includes better machine learning ops that makes technology like FSR4 a lot better than it would have been. We should expect AMD, as it rolls out FSR4, to lean into the Navia 4 architecture capabilities, so the new cards. Tim then asked for confirmation that FSR4 would improve performance, and David confirmed that compared to the analytical approach of FSR3, it's a significant improvement.
So, and I had somebody else with me who was helping me with the videography side, and they're much more into upscaling and monitors and that side of things. And he's like, yeah, FSR4 is a big improvement over FSR3.
Yeah. Michael from Tech Power Up asked about the top priorities of RDNA 4. David gave 3. 1, improving performance, about areas that gamers care about most. So ray tracing, machine learning for FSR4, and machine learning super resolution. Second was the architecture design for efficiency, not just performance per watt, but also manufacturing, design, all optimized to deliver the best value to end user, so performance per dollar. So some things maybe cost down because it's more cost efficient sort of thing. There are many things you can do in manufacturing. Excuse me. Third is go to market, driving transparency in terms of positioning, performance to the end user, and then pricing the product so that the Radeon brand delivers. So this whole thing about go to market means that they want a coherent, coalesced message, not just 5 minutes at the end of a keynote. Dave from PC Gamer asked about AMD's ability to scale up manufacturing if the product line is a major success. Frank said that no single GPU launch is going to triple your market share overnight, which is fair. But AMD is good at modeling demand and can manage an uptick. Then Ian Bristow from AMD, he said, "Can I have the final question?" He said, can you confirm if the benchmark numbers on the internet were true? Because apparently there's been some leaks or projections. All the data you have is pretty much inaccurate. So all the data out there about RDNA 4 is wrong. The performance data that's out there on RDNA 4 is completely inaccurate. The other thing I'll tell you is that nobody has a final driver. So how can the data be accurate? That's why I can confidently say that the data is not accurate. There have been questions saying, well, exactly how different would it be from a final driver? 3%, 4%? To be honest, you can hide a lot of power. A lot of power stuff behind a final driver / firmware update. Stuff that will easily reduce idle power by 25, 30%. These are all switches that you've validated internally and then just at the final day just go enabled. Which, to be fair, is science drivers and that sort of thing. So.
You can also play with clock speed and put a cap and all sorts of things.
So why didn't AMD talk about RDNA 4? They want to do a proper launch. They don't want it just to be the and finally at the end of a 45. If they had a 2-hour keynote, they would have probably stuck it in. In previous years, AMD has done this and Intel has done this. They've flown people out early to events like CES and Computex, where they will have the tech day before the show, and then the show is the launch. nobody did it this time around. And I think because the timing was awkward, because we all landed Sunday, or you landed Saturday, I know.
Yeah.
And the press events were Monday.
Yep.
Right. And that all comes down to the fact that New Year was a Wednesday. If New Year was a Thursday or Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday, I can see them having time, and then CES will be pushed into the weekend. But as a result, it wasn't, and that's kind of why it was delayed. So, yeah, there we go on. So that's AMD. Put a box in it. Done. Ship it. Done.
And now we get to the funny, one of the funniest demonstration at CES I've seen.
So if you were here during the pre-show, I said we're going to do this in company alphabetical order, just because that's how the slides came out. So next up is an AI company called DeepX, and that's just
that's sideways. Okay.
Right. So DeepX, if you don't know, design a small little ASIC, designed for computer vision. It's a Taiwanese company. They always seem really glad when I come by. They're going to have a data center accelerator as well. But George saw them at the show floor. What did you see, George? And what exactly are we looking at here?
So what you guys are looking at is what they call the butter test. So basically what this is showing is that when actually performing work, their chip does not melt butter above to the point where it becomes fully liquid. It stays nice and cool, whereas their competitors, their butter is completely melted and gets quite warm.
So in an attempt to talk about SoC temperature, they're saying that their SoC goes up to 35.5 degrees peak, butter melts at 36, 37, and their competitor's chip goes up to 60 degrees. And they're calling this the, I'll go back a slide, and unfortunately it's rotated, but butterproof and touchable.
And the butter benchmark.
Welcome to DeepX's revolutionary butter benchmark test. And it's yeah. This is apparently a thing. It got Cheese's attention.
Yeah, like wait, hold on, butter is it's interesting.
Over the years we've seen toothpaste thermal paste tests and chocolate thermal paste and butter as a thermal.
Unsalted butter. It was unsalted butter.
Oh, so it wasn't. You can't believe it's not. It wasn't yeah. So this is nothing to do with buttered donuts, which is something else in the industry, and we've got content and videos on that. This is just simply an opportunity to showcase peak thermal performance. So that's DeepX. Next up is another AI startup called Efficient Computing, which, funnily enough, one of the people there is somebody I actually know from when he used to be on the investment side. The reason I bring this up is because if you're a frequent viewer of my channel, you may have heard me mention about a company called Sambanova, and about an AI architecture called a CGRA, coarse-grained reconfigurable array. It's quite a rare architecture. And then people call it data flow, but pretty much everything is data flow these days. And so far, Sambanova is the only company to efficiently make CGRA work in a chip and build a business around it. Whether that business is viable long-term, we'll wait and see. But here's a company that's actually made another CGRA, this time focused on low power, which I thought was interesting. They're still in the so this is just a small prototype. This is just simply person detection, and they said, with a small battery, you last a third of a year with it constantly on. But if you're going on off, it can last many years on a standard cell battery. The whole point about CGRAs, for those of you who are interested, is instead of having core in a big mesh, imagine separating that mesh into something that can be core or memory, or core or memory. But instead, the core is very simple. So if you need to do like a matrix multiplication, and you need to go between core and memory many times, you just circle around. So it's not an efficient use of silicon compute, but it's an efficient density of compute. It means you don't have to build a massive chip to do a CGRA, but the thing is, it's more focused on, I guess, batch one. But CGRAs are interesting, and this is a company, and again, that's another rotated. The normal diagram for a CGRA is those blocks coming around. Yeah, so imagine you're programming a Nvidia GPU, and you've got your SMX, and imagine the data going out of the SMX, and rather than it going to memory, it goes straight back into the top of the SMX to do another round of compute. It's yeah, it's not exactly that, but it's
so
it's also pipeline, so it's meant to be in some ways deterministic. So yeah, yeah.
So okay,
well, I saw this a couple of hours ago, but yeah, I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
Let's go to this. George wants to talk about this.
Yeah, so this just came down the wire now, but UA-Link just added Alibaba, Apple, and Synopsys to their board of directors.
So explain what UA-Link is.
UA-Link is, for all intents and purposes, AMD's GMI protocol opened up to the industry.
No, what you should say is, this is the industry's attempt to be a competitor to NVLink, built on AMD's GMI. It's built on AMD's technology, but it's designed to be a competitor to NVIDIA's NVLink.
Yes.
By being a more open standard. So, yeah, UA and NVLink. I mean, there's Ultra Ethernet Consortium, which is something else. But no, this is important because not only do the companies that are currently involved with that, Alibaba, Apple, and Synopsys. Yeah, Synopsys on the EDA side. Can you imagine if Apple adopts UA-Link?
That would be funny.
Though, you'd have to wonder exactly where they would use it. Are they going data center?
Are they going to be making their own dedicated? Because at one point, did they have like a dedicated like video acceleration chip for like the MacBook Pro? I mean, maybe they'll make their own dedicated AI accelerator.
The thing is, we'll get to it in a second, but Nvidia Digits, their new mini PC, has QSFP ports on it, which I think are 200 gig. But Mac Mini is only 10 because it uses standard Ethernet. If you could scale up Mac Minis or M4s using something like a UA-Link, yeah, that might be interesting. We'll see. Yeah, Apple says here, promise in addressing connectivity challenges and creating new opportunities for expanding AI capabilities and demands. Apple has a long history in collaborating in innovations that drive our industry forward, and we're excited to join the UA-Link board of directors. Typically, these things, you usually pay a bit of money, like $250,000 to get a seat on the board of directors. It could be that this is just they want to build a PCIe accelerator, but instead of using it over PCIe, they're going to use it over UA-Link. So that way you can't stick it into your PC.
Yeah, that
sounds like an Apple thing to do.
But right? That absolutely would be an Apple thing, yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that Alibaba does plenty of its own silicon, so And yeah, Synopsys is a good shout as well. I think Cadence is already there. 65 members. Let's see the members. Yeah, AWS, Cisco, Google, Intel. Cadence isn't on there.
No, they're contributor members, contributing members.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you also have, Cornelis, Alphawave Semi, ARM, Credo and Fabrica, Giga.io. Everybody's getting on board. Even Montage, if you happen to know who they are. And ZTE. And Tenstorrent is there. And then you've got, other adopter members. Some of these are software companies. But yeah. So it's expanding. No Broadcom. I see Marvell, no Broadcom. Anyway, let's go back to the slides. Next up in our alphabetical attach is Frore. That's F plus raw, Frore. If you don't know who Frore are, they design MEMS-based cooling. I've got a couple of videos here just in case people haven't seen it. So what you have here is a little, I think it's like 3.5 mil high that can cool 5 watts by vibrating a silicon membrane, essentially. And it goes like that. And if you want to see the airflow, it looks kind of something like this. This is one of their visualization videos. And the idea is that with one of their small Paks, or with one of their small systems, you can cool 5 watts in a very thin. It's also dust proof and waterproof and everything else. So the idea is you don't need a massive fan like you have on the left. You have what's on the right. I've done a video on this. I think even Linus has done a video on this. PC World has done a video on this. And the funny thing is, out of the whole of their booth, it was this fan on the Xilinx Creus robotics system that was making noise and nothing else. However, what they were showcasing, and they've shown it in previous events, but I wanted to highlight it here, is this. The 2 black things on the right, and it's called their AirJet Pak. And so each pack is 5 of those 5-watt coolers connected together, and they designed it like a standardized form factor. So you can put it into a system and it will provide, as long as the thermals line up, 25 watts of cooling. The whole point here is that you can get an AGX Orin 64 gigabytes from Advantech in this form factor, which is a 45-watt system, and put 2 25-watt Paks on it like this. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. And essentially, you get this massive reduction in volume and weight for an embedded product. Because this has to be passive, right? So you build it passive. But because these are dust-proof and what have you, environment-proof, you don't need all of that big, massive heatsink. You've actually got an active cooler that doesn't need a bunch of the protections. So this is their Pak, which does 25 watts. And you can see this is in a Nano Super, which is what Nvidia announced, middle of last year. They're sort of juiced up.
Oh, no, they announced it end of last year, like near the holidays.
Either way, it's designed to go into there. And the whole point is Frore has Paks that do 5 watt, 15 watt, and 25 watt. And they're getting some traction. We saw integration into mini PCs, into SSDs, into portable SSDs. They had a smartphone demo where they put it into the camera bump in a smartphone. Apparently they showed it off in China, and a lot of the Chinese smartphone companies were really interested. They've even built design kits so you can change out the fans on your laptop with a vapor chamber with a couple of these on, or 2 or 3 of these on. And because the M4 is new, they also did an M4 iPad as well, just showing it off. Most of their business right now is very much B2B. So people who have B2B uses, think like stadium lights that don't need massive heat sinks and fans. You can reduce the weight of them, spotlights and stuff. So you can cool them with these, and it's a lot more efficient, and it makes it lighter to carry and what have you. So at a consumer event, they didn't have much consumer new to show, but they're still there, and they had prime position right at the bottom of one of the elevators at the Venetian, same as last year. So it meant they got a lot of foot traffic, and they gave me some nice nori sheets to eat on the way out. But that's fun. It's yeah, it's people saying you can put these into Steam Decks and such. And yeah, you can. I mean, they could fit, and you wouldn't have a whiny 8,000 RPM fan going on.
Chat, am I still super loud? I think it's because my mic's slightly readjusted because of I hit something over here.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Oops. Well, I guess I can speak a little bit softer and try and.
I may be able to change that this end.
Yeah, I wonder if my gain went out of spec. Let me try and lower my.
No, I've done it here. I've done it.
Okay, then I can speak at my normal volume.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
So next, number 2, big boys, Intel, with their new interim co-CEO MJ taking the floor. This is again one of the big keynotes, an official CES keynote, 45 minutes. Variety of things to say. It depends how much you're interested in them. So first of all, it's a case of reiterating Lunar Lake 200 V series. Yeah, I can hear everything you typed, George, just so you know.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so first of all, let's go with what was launched last year, Lunar Lake, this built-in LPDDR into the package, 4 P cores, 4 E cores, Line Cove and Gracemont.
For
Skymont. Line and Sky.
Skymont.
Yeah.
So Skymont and Lion Cove.
Yeah. Basically, this, they've said already, is a 1-generation product, just to see if it would work. Built on TSMC N3, but packaged at Intel. And their big number was that they've already shipped 1.5 million of these devices. Count 1. And Intel does a lot of B2B stuff. I've got here that some investors are saying that's not enough. The fact that Intel ships somewhere around 180 million units a year, desktop and notebook, if I've got my market share numbers right. So 1.5 million isn't enough. It's just over 3 to 4%. So it's not the largest ramp, however, it is their first TSMC ramp ever. So there is that. They also highlighted B series GPUs, Battlemage, saying it was a good launch. They learned from Alchemist, basically, but also they had the benefit of another couple of years of software updates in advance. So I've got my, where did I put my, it's the thing up here that says B580. Yeah, it's, I actually tried putting it in my Threadripper and it wouldn't boot, so I need to figure out what's going
on. The B550 CNC has is at Chester's house, so
580.
580.
Yeah,
I say 570.
No, you said 550.
Oh,
you said 550.
580.
Yeah, it's we are seeing some reports that older CPUs are having a little bit of trouble with performance versus new CPUs. You guys just did a driver overhead article, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So it's interesting looking at how Intel's drivers are, even though they've developed GPU drivers for years, how they are in some regards behind, in quite a few regards behind AMD and Nvidia.
The growing pains as you scale the chip in software.
Yeah.
But Chester's done a great article here. He pulls out one of 3D Mark's old tests, the API overhead test, to do some comparisons here about where Intel sits versus AMD in this case, because I assume that's the other card he had on hand to test with.
Yeah, I mean, he could have tested with, like, apparently chat's also now hearing echo in the room. What can I do?
I'm not hearing much of an echo.
Huh. Okay. But yeah, he could have also tested with Maxwell in theory.
Yeah, but it's a good read. It goes in depth. It's very typical Chester.
Maxwell
sort
and
of content.
Pascal he could have tested.
Yeah. So if you're a GPU vendor, go send Chester some new GPUs. I think that's the.
I need to go email Nvidia and say, hey, could you maybe send us a project data to the 59D?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So I guess the big B2B announcement at the show for Intel was this enhancement of vPro. If you don't know, vPro is what Intel uses for its commercial line of chips that has a bunch of features that allow companies to control your system remotely. So that means verifying Windows updates, verifying software updates, limiting what you can install on the system, doing remote things like remote shutdown. And if you own a company and you give your hardware to 10,000 people, you want to make sure they're actually right and nobody gets a virus that then gets into the system and then destroys the rest of your network, especially if you've got shared files and shared directories and what have you, especially if you're running a multi-million-dollar law firm or construction agency or retail. So you use vPro. AMD has other features that they have for their equivalent, and Qualcomm's building that up as well. But Intel vPro is like 95% of the mind share, or if not 99%. People who spec out a commercial B2B purchase of notebooks who want this features, they pretty much all spec vPro. And so new features coming to vPro that allows for more immediate setup, more immediate management, more immediate remote management, just streamlining it. I did hear some criticism saying that it's very well that people spec vPro, but only half of it actually works as intended, so you don't actually get everything that you need. But if they're doing new generation vPro fleet services for that business, it makes sense.
So what worries me about this is that this is essentially vPro in the cloud, and that you can access devices from the cloud. And what worries me is
you could kind of do that before. It was called on-prem cloud, though.
Yes, but here's the thing: you now have ring -2 access from the cloud. What could ever possibly go wrong there?
Don't ever turn on your RF, I guess. It was one of their major announcements, so I thought I should mention it. And then next we have the consumer stuff. So I've seen here, George, you've put in our document you wanted to mention 200U for a second.
Yeah, so they didn't announce this, and it wasn't in my video. I only found this when I went trolling through Intel Arc, which is their database. But Arrow Lake U, or the 200U series, is Meteor Lake, but it's Meteor Lake on Intel 3 instead of Intel 4. So they did a node update for 200U.
However, the utility between 4 and 3 is pretty much identical.
Yes, but there was actually a like 400 or 500 megahertz clock bump at the high end.
Yeah.
So
for those of you who don't know, Intel 3 is like a superset, which includes Intel 4 in it. So if you go to 3, you just have access to more, and it's more optimized. But yeah, okay, so 200U, even though it's 200, will still be Meteor Lake, not Arrow.
yes, it uses Redwood Cove and Crestmont cores.
Are they 282s or 286s?
282s.
Oh, sorry, 682.
Sorry,
Okay, so
2 P cores, 2 E cores, and then 2 LPE cores.
You mean 2P8E, 2LPE?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Is that not what I said?
No, which is funny because I saw Meteor Lake 282 when I was in, where would I seen it? Was it in Malaysia? Yeah, when I was in Malaysia at Intel's fab, but I don't think they ever productized that on Intel 4.
282? 282 was productized.
I never saw much about it.
It was a very toned down release, but yeah, it did release.
Yeah. So 200H is the traditional H series mobile parts in that 28 to 45 watt range. 16 cores, which is what, 8P?
So 6 Lion Cove cores, 8 Skymont cores, and then 2 Crestmont LP cores, because the SoC tile is shared.
Right, okay. That makes perfect sense. 99 tops here for the AI is that's the combination CPU, GPU, NPU.
So what's interesting here is that the GPU, even though it's still using the same Alchemist base as Meteor Lake, this IP is more derived off of the DGPUs because it has XMX units.
So Alchemist Plus.
Yes.
So it's still not XE2 because that's only in Lunar. But and then you have a chip here. That was the best photo you got, apparently. Yeah.
The lighting wasn't great here, but yeah, that's the 200H chip.
We also had the 200HX, which is the higher end version. This
is just Arrow Lake S, so that's Arrow Lake desktop, just put again into a BGA form factor for laptops at a lower power consumption target.
Yeah. This is going to be in the desktop replacement. This is the one that's going to be paired with discrete GPUs.
Yes.
In big designs. 200H I've got as coming at the end of January, so the end of the month, and then HX is going to be at the end of the quarter. That's what I've got on my list. And here's some performance numbers with the HX in workstation-based benchmarks, plus Geekbench for some reason. There was also an update mentioned on 200S, the desktop stuff, which we should talk about. Have you been following this a bit closer than I have?
Not really. I should be, but I haven't really been following it. But this is all the firmware updates and essentially a discussion of what happened with the Arrow Lake launch.
Yeah. There have been a number of performance and temperature issues with Arrow Lake, most of which Intel has said, we can fix this, you just have to give us time. Now they're essentially launching I think this is like a second lump of updates all in one.
Yeah.
And they're pushing it to all the motherboard vendors, so people have to go update their BIOS, and the idea is that this will fix it. And I think in some instances, performance will go up around 25% to what it should have been.
Yeah. Well, if you didn't set high performance mode out of the box, yeah, you could expect that. Most reviewers set high performance just as a standard practice.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And admin modes and all the other issues that came with having that. Yeah. Apparently if you enable admin mode, you got a performance deficit. But most people have run admin mode when they're benchmarking because that gives you the most flexibility.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that you only know after everybody launches their review, and you're like, why is all this crap happening? So yeah, so Intel's going to fix that. Let me bring back the images because next up is Panther Lake. This is what we're waiting for, Intel 18A. This is the process node that will make or break the company. And what we had is MJ showing off Panther Lake A0 silicon on stage, basically saying, yeah, their first set of test runs on the silicon are go. The partners have the silicon in-house. So for those of you who are perhaps not aware of what Intel's SKU stack looks like, top to bottom is called Arrow Lake, except for a tiny sliver in the middle is Lunar Lake, which is that combined DRAM part. Panther Lake is the follow-on from Arrow, and it's going to be a top to bottom consumption everywhere from desktop all the way from mobile to desktop. And the whole point is, instead of using TSMC, it's going to be using Intel tiles for CPU and GPU. Not too sure about the SoC yet, but we'll see. All built on Intel packaging.
It would be interesting if the GPU was on Intel.
Either way, more tiles are coming back to Intel. And the whole point is, if you build the tile in-house, you get the revenue and margin benefits of keeping it in-house. So all the margin that they lost on Arrow and Lunar due to using TSMC, they get a good chunk of it back with Panther. They say ramp for this part is going to start in the second half of the year. Though
they
release
said launch was going to be in Q4.
Yeah, there's been some debate whether that may be late Q4 or Q5. It may be a CES launch next year. But they have it up and running. They have it in-house. They had some demos at the event. I mean, the only thing that people were allowed to do pretty much was look at Task Manager. But it was booted and it was running, and it was Panther Lake. So 18. But I think the thing to think about here is this is a gate all around process.
Yes.
With backside power delivery.
Yes.
They may be 2 years ahead of TSMC now.
Yes.
What the fuck? I thought Intel were 3 years behind. Turns out 5 nodes in 4 years actually, because they also did that node between 4 and 20A, where they
the
one they did
3 and 18.
Sorry, no, between 3 and 20, where they did backside power without gate all around, just to make sure it worked before they added the gate all around. 20A still existed. They just ended up not productizing it because 18A is a superset of 20A, and 18A works. So there's, again, I mentioned this in the last tech routine. I've still got a video to do about Intel's yield numbers and defect rates on 18A to talk about. But the fact that they showed this at CES was the big plus point from Intel for the show, for sure. At least that's what I liked. Next up, I want you to explain what this is.
Okay, so this was neat. So we were going about the SK Hynix booth, and there was some glass stuff.
They let you in? Sometimes companies are really weird. It's only
this was a floor on the booth. This was just the big SK booth.
But was this on the show floor, or is this in the Venetian?
No, on the show floor.
Okay, I saw the one in Venetian, but
yeah, no. This was on the show floor. So they had some glass substrate stuff. But what really caught my eye was this. So what this is essentially a test like a test bed platform for LPCAMM, which is essentially LPDDR on a CAMM2 form factor. And this system's actually Meteor Lake. The image isn't super clear here, but it's a Meteor Lake LPCAMM test platform.
Yeah, I can see it says
So-
LPD5 Meteor Lake P. Yeah, something.
Yeah, but removable LPD aren't coming. Maybe for stuff like Strix Halo, we'll get upgradable RAM.
Well, no, it's
future products.
So the thing is, this is technically a heatsink where you can replace a CPU as well, right? This is just meant to be a thermal.
Yes, but it's neat that you have the LPCAMM is really the thing here.
Let's see if I can share this tab. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. LPCAMM2.
Yeah.
No, not just LPCAMM.
Yeah.
So hopefully people can see that.
The CAM2 form factor.
Yeah. And that says LPDDR5X CAM2 PC5 7500. 64 gigabytes.
Ooh.
108R by 8. That sounds really funny to say. Yeah. And it's just a dedicated test platform. Sweet. It's always fun to see that stuff because you don't often see it. Yeah, it's fixed function says it's a clamp socket ES board for BGA testing. So I disagree with him here. I would be shocked if LPCAMM ends up being used as socketable. I've got a feeling they're gonna try and make it like CPUs, like CPU socketable. It's something you probably only want to do once or twice on a system if you're new. So we'll see. And to what Dango says, isn't Dell announcing LPCAMM laptops already? So they introduced the standard.
Yeah,
2 years ago,
2 or 3 years ago. But LPCAMM was originally a Dell standard that they gave to the JDAC.
Yeah. So
specification.
Yeah, and the whole point is, to be honest, we saw this at Computex and we wanted desktop boards with it because it just makes it look cleaner and airflow better. Mm-hmm. So it's is what it is. So next on the list, I think, is
Nvidia.
Team Green. So Nvidia, they had like I said, a 2-hour keynote. Did we get phone numbers on the attendees? At least 10,000, if not 20.
I will fully admit I was not in attendance because I just watched it because I needed food and I wasn't going to fight in the line.
It was the end of a long day. I think a lot of people decided to take the I'm just going to watch the stream route. Yeah. Because this thing is so popular. The VIP queuing opened 2 hours before it started. Because I had a VIP queue badge and they said, yeah, we open at more than 2 hours, 2 hours 15. We open at 4:15 for a 6:30 start or something like that. It's always weird. It's always interesting because you never know what Jensen's going to talk about. At Computex, for example, he had a 2-hour keynote, but then he didn't speak about consumer. He spoke about HPC. So the fact that he spoke a lot about consumer and AI development in the consumer space with consumer type things was good. And a couple of highlights. We'll get to the desktop GPUs in a second. I want to talk about this because this is the one that I think most people in our sphere were more interested in. And it's called Project Digits. Let's see if I can bring up the size photo. It's a teeny tiny mini PC.
It's just a little guy.
So my guess is it's around 5 inches square. It may be slightly rectangular. So for those in non-Catholic units, that's 12.5, 13 centimeters square. At about, I don't know, 4.5 centimeters high. It's tiny.
It's adorable.
And it's got this, teenager's pockmarked face style on the front and the back. Though I'm not. Well, I was discussing this with one of the Nvidia employees, and he seemed to agree with me. It's like that doesn't look like a vent through. What does look like a vent is what's on the left and the right. One's an intake, one's an exhaust. But inside is the Grace Blackwell 10 superchip. Actually, I really should have prepped a different image here. Let me see if I can go find it. Talk about the GB10 chip for a second.
So GB10 is a collaboration with MediaTek for the CPU side. The CPU side has 20 ARM cores, 10 X925, 10 Cortex X925 cores, and 10 Cortex A725 cores. Clock speed has not been announced yet, to the best of my knowledge. However, these CPUs do support the scalable vector extension SVE ISA of ARM, and I think that will make this product the first, or one of the first, easily developable SVE systems on the market.
So it's even though it's called Grace, it doesn't use the same Neoverse V2 cores in the big Blackwell systems, in the Grace Blackwell and the Grace Hopper systems. It does use consumer grade cores, but as George said, with SVE. We're led to understand that this is MediaTek develops the CPU core, which is the one on the right.
Yeah.
And then the Blackwell one is the one on the left. And we believe there's probably an NVLink bridge in the middle for high speed.
Yeah.
Actually, can I find the GB10 slide as well? No, because I'm getting Ibanez guitars when I search for it.
That's so, yeah. The Blackwell CPU, the Blackwell GPU, they haven't announced much other than it has 1 petaflop or up to 1 petaflop of FP4 performance. There we go.
So this is what it looks like inside. So there is 128 gigabytes of LPDDR5X unified memory between CPU and GPU.
Yep.
The petaflop of FP4, people have said actually that's half a petaflop of FP8, because realistically FP8 is still the leading.
So, okay, my questions are that 1 petaflop. What does that actually mean? Is that 1 petaflop dense? Is that 1 petaflop sparse? But,
knowing Nvidia, it's probably sparse.
So really, it's 250 teraflops of FP8.
Yeah. It does come with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and then ConnectX as well.
Yeah.
So
now, question here is,
just in case people are wondering, $3,000.
Yeah, which
plus
honestly,
tax.
For this is not bad at all. For this whole package,
there were a number of people in the space who build mini PCs for AI who said they can do a lot better for $3,000. The problem is, go do it in 5 square inches.
Well, not
or
just
25
that,
square.
Right? Go get a ConnectX or any other NIC with this capability, right?
Yeah. It's these are the ports on the back, right? You've got 4 Type-C, one of which is used for power. Right? There is no other power input to this. It is PD, USB PD. Or it could be their own proprietary charging, like what Oppo does or whatever. Ethernet NIC, HDMI output. I assume that you can do DisplayPort over Type-C as well with some of the other outputs. And then you have your ConnectX QSFP ports. And the idea is that you can do direct digits to digits connectivity with those ports, and the fact that there's two means that you can probably do it in a ring. The thing is, when I saw this, I went, this is going to be Nvidia's Mac Mini moment, right? When Mac Mini came out, when the M1 came out, and then when it suddenly became an AI engine and whatever, people started trying to build commercial uses for it because it was small, tiny. Everybody could have it by their desk, whatever. It wasn't loud, but if you wanted to scale, you could just buy 100 of them and put them in a rack. The problem there is that the Mac Mini with 10 gig Ethernet, which is one of the main selling points, was $600 or $700 for the base model. That's the lowest memory, lowest chip, whatever. At 3,000, it's a different value prop. You don't just buy 20 and stick it in a rack. You go buy a proper GPU server. This is designed as a development platform kit, not really as a standalone do-it-yourself thing. If it is, then what it's going to try and replace is on-premise local AI edge compute. But realistically, I see it more as a dev platform. I've seen people turn around and say, yeah, we're going to buy one of these for every personnel company to develop on. It comes with a custom version of Linux designed for NVIDIA's AI development.
It runs, it's DGX OS 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so the whole point is NVIDIA wants to drive people to go develop on this and then port their software over to a big server. Because of the lead time of Blackwell and because it keeps getting delayed, arguably this will probably be the first contact point a lot of people have for Blackwell systems.
Yeah.
So
actually that brings up an interesting point that I still have yet to get answered. But what version of Blackwell is this using? Is this using data center Blackwell or client Blackwell?
It'll be data center. Excuse me. It will be data center because that's the market they're targeting. They're not targeting gaming on this. Not with one HDMI output.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Where else could this SoC fit in?
A console?
I'm thinking laptop.
Yeah. Oh, you're thinking... excuse me, my notes.
I'm thinking Windows on ARM laptop.
You're thinking this is the potential Nvidia MediaTek laptop chip that people keep talking about. So, I will say... what was I going to say? So the power on this, right? It's the right form factor to be about 40 watts, I think. Though I have heard people say 45 to 80. I think at 80 watts, something this size is going to be incredibly loud. It definitely has active cooling in there. But I think around I'm pretty sure it's going to be about the 40 to 45 watt, which would put it in notebook territory as well. So yeah. Or as Dango says, is this a Switch 3 chip? No. It's a bit too expensive.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure Nintendo would not be paying for this.
That being said, I bet you somebody will buy one and custom attach
yes.
Oh, please. It does come with storage, if I remember correctly.
4 terabytes of storage, yeah.
Yeah. Are they going to pull an Apple and do custom SSD?
I hope not.
Given the size, that will be a 2242
or a 2230. But you can get those drives.
Not in 4 terabyte, I don't think, because I tried looking. Not yet, anyway. I believe Sabrent have said they're going to do it when the market demands it, but they can. If it's server Blackwell, could it still have LPDDR5? Yes.
Yeah, that's just a memory bus thing. That's inconsequent. Like, the cores don't care what they're fed with as long as they're fed.
Well, the memory controller will be on the CPU die.
Not necessarily. It could be on the GPU die.
Let's go back to that picture. Where is it? There's plenty of space there for a memory controller. I've got to assume the memory controller's on the CPU die.
I would assume the other way. I would assume it would be on the GPU side.
Either way. So that's digits. Now we have 5000 series.
I do apologize for the soft photo. I screwed up the...
It's all right. We have the Zotac 5090, plenty of 5000 series GPUs everywhere. It's coming. I should have got this sorted. Let's see if I can find this image. Yep.
So, while Ian's pulling that up, I'll run down the specs. The 5090 has 92 billion transistors, 21,760 CUDA cores, 3,352 AI tops. If this is following the IDA naming scheme for AI tops, then this is probably FP4 sparse. 5th generation RT cores with 318 teraflops, which I don't think it really means much, but that's how much compute the RT cores can do. 2.41 gigahertz boost clock, 2 gigahertz base clock, 32 gigabytes of GDDR7 memory on a 512-bit memory bus, which gives just under 1.8 terabytes per second of memory bandwidth.
Nice.
Shoved into a 2U package at 575 watts. Your minimum PSU requirement is 1,000 watts, which seems a little bit light.
It's 3 slot, isn't it?
No, it's 2 slot. It's 2 slot. The Founders Edition is 2 slot.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's very thin which makes me wonder, how the heck are they cooling this? I want to see the Gamers Nexus teardown of this, just because I want to see how does this all work.
With unicorn farts and a prayer, clearly. I have to assume 575 watt is peak.
I mean, yeah, but you are going to be able to hit that.
Yeah.
So how are you going to cool it? $2,000, which again, honestly, for what it is not terrible.
So the 4090 was the MSRP was 1,700.
1,600.
But it very quick almost went to 3,000 at one point. Right?
Yes.
And then it came down. Then it went back. I think I got mine at 1,900. So the argument here is that they're saying it's 35% faster than a 4090 in gaming, but that's with all the software technologies on top, not pure rasterization.
Yeah, personally, I'm waiting for third-party benchmarks to see where it actually falls. Personally,
you can bet your bottom dollar Nvidia will have a list of requirements for testing. As long as you're on, you must have this enabled, you must have this game, you must have to test this, and it works best in this, which they're more than willing, more than welcome to do. It's I mean, from my perspective, the games I play barely use my 4090 right now. I more use it for workloads like video rendering and stuff. So
yeah, like I've mostly, like I haven't, well, I had to RMA my XTX because I got pin 21. Yeah, like I have an XTX, but I don't really need it, honestly. That's why I was like, I would be perfectly happy with just the little HP thing.
To be honest, how many people are going to buy it simply for the memory capacity, 32 gigs?
A lot of people.
Yeah, especially developers, right?
Absolutely. Now, moving on to the, actually, one note, the 5090 mobile, interestingly enough, has 3 gigabyte GDDR7 modules.
Right.
So, but it's the only one of this whole family that has 3 gigabyte modules. Moving on to the 5080, no transistor count, but 10 752 CUDA cores. So 10,752 CUDA cores.
So half as much.
Yeah, essentially the 5080 is half of 5090.
Right.
In everything except for, interestingly enough, encoders. The 5090 has 3 encoders and 2 decoders. The 5080 has 2 encoders and 2 decoders. But otherwise, it's essentially half of a 5080.
With a slightly higher frequency.
Slightly higher frequency and 360 watt TDP at $1,000. The 5070 here, interestingly enough, is same memory bus and same memory bandwidth, I believe. Slightly cut down on the CUDA cores and clock.
The TI you're talking about, the TI versus
the
the
5070 Ti, or TI, however you want to say it,
TI
is 300 watts. And $750, and then the 5070 is again another reduction in CUDA cores at 6144. That 1 petaflop of AI comes back. 2.5 gigahertz boost, 12 gigs of GDDR7, 192-bit bus, 250 watts at 550.
So they were saying that the 5070 is 4090 performance, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
that
includes
all the software gubbins. Yeah. So if you have a game that can enable all of that, then yeah, you can enable that. Because there were some memes about 4090 owners now getting scared that their 4090 is worth less than $500. There's still a memory difference, right? So
memory bandwidth and memory capacity difference falls in favor of the 4090.
I'm surprised they're still doing GDDR7 on the 70, maybe on the 60 afterwards. That'll go back
maybe
down
6x
to
or
6, because it's still a premium to use 7.
Yep.
What was interesting is that I saw a 5070 with the 16-pin connector that Nvidia uses.
Yep.
So that's their big 600-watt connector on a 5070. I also saw 5090s with just one of the same connector. So
there's different ratings for that connector. Some connectors will go up to 600 watts. Some connectors only go up to 300 watts. As in the cables are only rated for that.
Yeah, so don't mix and match, dear God.
Yeah.
So with that, this is me taking a photo with the Thai guy.
Do you mean the TI guy?
So for those of you who don't know, this is Jeff Fisher. He is the SVP of gaming at Nvidia. He has absolutely no clue who I am. I was just sitting this is their showroom area. in one of the hotels. I was just there actually mooching off the Wi-Fi because it was 150 meg, and my hotel room is only 20 meg. So I was just doing some stuff. I think I was there for 4 hours in the end. But almost as I'm about to leave, Jeff walks by. So I'm like, "Hey Jeff, can we take a selfie?" And Jeff goes, "That's usually a Jensen thing, but sure." And so we took a selfie, and I posted over social media going, "Jeff has no idea who I am." And then I came up with a joke: I should have worn a tie. So Jeff is infamous for doing. Is it CES last year?
Yes.
He did the Nvidia keynote address. So it was an online only thing. They didn't even do one physically at the show, where he was showing off all the latest gaming stuff. But he kept calling it like 4070 Ti, as in Ti comes from titanium. The thing is, this was an in-joke inside Nvidia, right? Because Nvidia arguably doesn't really care what you say, but realistically it's Ti. But because he's the head of the gaming segment, he's the head of GeForce.
Yeah.
He gets to say whatever the hell he wants. If you go back and watch that presentation, some points he says Ti, and at other points he says Ti.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think people recognize that at the time. Because I did go back and I checked. I was like, hang on, he's saying both. And that's because when he's consciously trying to be a troll,
he says Ti.
So he says Ti. So here we have Jeff Fisher, Executive Vice President of Trolling at Nvidia.
Actually, speaking of Nvidia, there is one last announcement that I would like to cover.
Oh.
And that's ConnectX8.
Okay.
ConnectX8, their new NIC, as most of you probably know, Nvidia acquired Mellanox a few years ago. Actually, quite a few years ago at this point. But they just announced ConnectX8, which is their new card, up to 800 gigabit line rate, and total of 800 gigabytes per second per card. Though that 800 gigabit line rate is only applicable for InfiniBand. For Ethernet, it's 400 gigabit line rate, but you can get up to 2 ports to be able to use that full 800 gigabit per second bandwidth, which is 100 gigabytes per second out to the network.
So
though what I actually find Ian, if you could pull up an image of it. Yeah, what's really interesting about it, if you could, I can pull up the data sheet, but what's really interesting is that it's up to 48 lanes of PCIe 6, which I was trying to get clarification on this. And apparently the actual PCIe mezzanine, like the mezzanine that we all know.
Yeah, it says here PCIe Gen 6 up to 48 lanes.
Yeah, so this mezzanine here, apparently on the ConnectX8 is actually 32 lanes. And then you can have a separate like mezzanine card for the extra 16.
So it says here in the spec sheet, dual ConnectX8 mezzanine. So basically, it goes into 2 PCI slots, or the equivalent of.
Okay. Well, then how do you get 48 out of that? Because I only count 32.
You repurpose the power ones for data.
That still wouldn't get you.
And you use a non-standard frequency.
That still doesn't get you 32 lanes, 48 lanes.
Or the equivalent of. I don't know. So it's hang on. The card up here. Yeah, looks fairly normal. There's a thing up here on the right that says black cable. Maybe you get some lanes from there.
Maybe. Magic. Leave it at that. Yeah.
It says Nvidia multi-host, so you can split one card between multiple hosts.
Yeah.
What I will say is, so do you remember Hot Chips? And do you remember the
24?
Nvidia present? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Nvidia presentation?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I know the story. Yeah.
So you remember I got up to ask a question, basically saying, what's the future of Bluefield, the Bluefield DPU, which is their Ethernet NIC? Because they had their Ethernet switches timeline going out to, what, 2026? But the Ethernet NIC stopped at 23. And I said, where's Bluefield going? And somebody at Nvidia took it the wrong way and thought I implied that the whole line was dead. I'm like, no, where is it? Because it's not on your roadmap. I believe this is the answer. They have decided to combine ConnectX and Bluefield into one product.
This has been a thing for a while.
But they're actually...
There's the ConnectX7 Super NIC. Which...
No, but it does InfiniBand and Ethernet. That's what I'm saying.
So did the old ConnectX, and so does Bluefield.
Bluefield doesn't do InfiniBand.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Why would they have both as part of the portfolio?
Same reason why AMD has a DPU and then a dedicated NIC.
But they function different parts of the market. It looks like that Bluefield has just been dissolved into ConnectX wholesale. Oh, here we go. David's saying Bluefield is programmable, ConnectX isn't. We'll get deeper into this because it's still something that's...
Where's my data sheet, Nvidia?
Sorry, can't have one.
Yeah, no, it supports both Ethernet and InfiniBand.
Okay, then.
So I don't think they are going... At least...
It sounds like they're pushing people towards ConnectX rather than Bluefield, regardless of interface. So either way, that's yeah. So that is what we had planned to talk about CES for a couple of hours. George has one last thing to put on the list, which we don't have images for, but go ahead.
So I'll pose a question, I guess, to both of us, but to you first, Ian. Whose booth and or suite did you miss that you wanted to see?
I think because I came over ill the last few days, I just didn't get to go around the show floor.
Yeah.
I think that was my main issue, because there were a number of things that I perhaps wanted to go see that I didn't. Lenovo keeps ignoring me when I want to go speak to them, so I didn't even go into Lenovo. I was too busy with meetings when I was actually sane and up and coherent. But other than that, really, I think I got to see... actually, no. I was meant to go meet with Kioxia, or Kyosha, as I like to keep calling them, because I haven't spoken to them in like 3 years, and I got a random message from their person, from their contact, who's been the same, and they said, "Hey, come meet us at our event or at our booth." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll be there." But I got there at 2 o'clock, and they had all left by noon. So I'm going to go see them next time I'm in the Bay Area, which at this rate will probably be end of February. I know Phison was still showing off their 128. Is it the 128 terabyte SSD? Yeah, the one that we saw at Supercomputing, because I bumped into them as well during the show, or at least while I was at a dinner. I saw their reps go by and we had a chat. I also bumped into Teren Tong, the Linus Media Group CEO. And we had a good chin wag about what they were doing there, what he was doing there. because he's obviously got a lot of business meetings and one-to-ones, and because he's ex Corsair and ex everything else, he also knows so many people in the industry anyway. So we had a good chat because it's still on the cards that I'm going to interview him. So
what's funny? What's funny was.
Hang on, let me give us a second. So Linus recently, I think I mentioned this on the last show. Linus recently did an interview with Colin and Samir. That's like 2.5 hours. It's actually a really good interview. People should go watch, even if you don't like the guy. It shows, what sort of learnings he's made in this industry, whether you believe they're right or wrong. It just goes to show that if you at least spend 10, 20 years in the mines, you do get a sense of what's going on above your head. So this is obviously, so Teren is obviously that group's new CEO. I do want to go because he's been there a year now, and he's splitting his time between the Bay and Canada. So hopefully I'll catch him next time I'm in the Bay, and we can sit down and we can have a chat. He's very amenable to talk to. He's been on a couple of videos, but obviously in front of the camera, you can get very stiff if you're not used to it. Yeah. So it's good to see him. Also bumped into Luke. Like I say, also bumped into Tim and Balin from Hardware Unboxed.
Apparently there was a cheese spotting in some of the B-roll for a Monitor Unboxed video.
You walk around enough, you're going to be in other people's videos, because I'm not sure if you went to the ASUS booth. That was packed. MSI booth was packed. For Thermaltake shut their booth so people could film.
That's pretty courteous.
Yeah, I think it was a top tier Latin America content creator, but I was there because they were right opposite AMD, I think, or something. Mm-hmm. And at 2:00 I saw them shut. They said filming in progress, and then I overheard saying, "Oh yeah, no, you have to come back at 4." So obviously some sort of sponsor spot thing. And these companies have multiple areas. So if you want to see products, you go see the product thing. If you have a meeting, you go to a meeting thing. Yeah, it's. I also met up with ARM. I spoke to a couple of their C-suite. I'm just trying to think who else did I definitely want to go see. I could have met with so many people, but we'll have to leave it for the next one.
Yep. Yeah, got to talk with ARM.
Yeah.
Got to talk with MIPS, which was interesting. I think their strategy is interesting. They want to be in every device without actually being every device.
For people who aren't aware, MIPS used to be the company behind the MIPS architecture, but now they just make RISC-V cores.
Yeah.
Because MIPS is essentially dead. So they're another RISC-V core design house. Is it just IP or is it also chips?
It's just IP.
Okay. But to Dove Jones's point, are they still around? They've changed a few hands.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I was glad I could set that up for you.
Yeah, that was good. Actually, the company that I wanted to talk to that never responded to me and I couldn't find their suite was SiFive. Because the person's email that you sent me, he was out of office.
Right.
And I need to follow up on that email. But yeah, I talk to them.
It's as we showed off in the last episode, you and I both have their development board.
Yeah.
George, be encouraging. We need more participants in this space.
Yes. Just I need to ask questions. Let me put it to you that way.
It's if you don't get another response in another week or so, let me know. Okay. I'd need to respond to them as well about other stuff. So yeah. Anybody else?
I got to see Gigabyte, which is good. Got to thank a couple people there for a little project that's coming up very soon that I've been
Is
trying
that
to
project
write
still
that
not out
video.
yet?
Huh?
Is it still not out yet?
It was delayed for CES.
Okay.
CES coverage came first. But I still need to shoot the video for that, and I can't get into headspace for that.
It's do it once, then do it again. That's my advice. Hang on, let me open this.
But yeah, I actually think I managed to see everyone that I needed to see.
Okay, so Qualcomm flew me out to CES, so I spent a good amount of time with Qualcomm, looking at their demos. It was analyst duties, right? So we were talking about brand and product cycle and where it's going, and they were looking for feedback from what the analysts were hearing from the industry and retailers, and they spoke about they've got a couple of they're really pleased with the sales response of Snapdragon for notebooks. They're saying it's gone above expectation, basically. They've got a couple of B2B contracts that are in the 5 digits of units. So they're executing on that. They said they've got almost 5,000 businesses are trying Snapdragon, or at least trying the Surface Snapdragon. So these are businesses that have bought one or two and deciding whether to make a bigger purchase. Which for a new entrant in the ecosystem is actually pretty good. They did the one thing that came out that neither you may have seen this, because I know you went to Lenovo, but the first Snapdragon X Elite mini PCs.
Yes, I did see those, but they were kind of Lenovo was showing off. Actually, I think the most interesting thing that they were showing directly at their booth was the rollable laptop, the rollable screen
with the rollable OLED display, the one that Linus showed on Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, the
it's prototype.
mini PCs were sort of in a corner.
But I mean, you and I have both spoken about the dev kit for Snapdragon X Elite was delayed, and then cancelled. Some people got them, but then they got refunds. And basically, Qualcomm turned around and said, we're going to let OEMs handle the design and distribution. So 2 companies coming out with them that we know of so far. Lenovo had the biggest presence, but Geekom, is it Geekom as well?
Yeah, Geekom.
Geekom also, they technically disclosed it 2 weeks before launch. Because I got an email during Christmas saying, come to our booth and come see our new Snapdragon X Elite mini PC. Okay. So yeah, that was good. HDMI 2.2 was announced for HDMI up to 96 gigs. And yeah, Dell kills XPS. Inspiron, Latitude, and Precision are going away in favor of Dell Pro, and Dell Pro Max. Each of those has 3 subcategories, either essentially base, plus, or premier. So the XPS 13 becomes the Dell 13 Premium.
So wait, we can have a Dell Premium Max. Wait, Pro Max Premium.
Yes. If you hated AMD's if you hated AMD's naming scheme, let's see. Asus has one of the first Thunderbolt 5 eGPUs with RTX 5090. not sure if you saw that XG Mobile thing
Yes,
that they showed off.
I briefly saw it, but that booth was so busy.
Yeah, it was. Razer has a new Blade 13 that is 30% thinner and now has AMD, so new laptops. The Asus ZenBook A14 is a 900-gram Copilot Plus PC. And news that isn't from CES, but did you hear about Intel RealSense?
Yes.
So RealSense, for those who don't know, are essentially Intel's motion capturing cameras that are designed for IoT, robotics, that sort of thing. 3.5 years ago, there was an announcement that they were killing the business. And then a couple of months later, they quietly said, actually, no, we're not. It has been announced by Intel, or at least Intel gave a quote to a company saying, or to a media outlet, basically saying, we are spinning out RealSense, so it becomes its own company, but it's going to be a company under Intel Capital, so it's going to be treated like a startup. So Intel Capital companies are companies that are funded by Intel Capital, that where there is synergy, leverage Intel's resources. But it's going to be its own, essentially it's going to have its own CEO, it's going to have its own business contracts and whatever. So, you know, it's a small play on robotics. We've always, it sounds like Intel Capital is buying it. So it's Intel doing like an internal transfer internally that may lead to a purchase later on. But because I remember being weirded out by this, because I thought RealSense was dead because of the announcement that it was being mothballed. And then 8 months ago, they announced a brand new RealSense camera. I'm like, hang on, isn't that dead? They're like, oh, clearly not. And then, you know, through this announcement, I learned that actually they quietly didn't kill it. So, yeah, it's interesting part of the business, and we all know the issues that Intel's going through. There was a question, and if you've got any questions now at the end of the Tech Poutine, please do get them in the chat. I did see a question about any thoughts about Intel new CEO. Like I said, they haven't got one yet. They've got 2 interim co-CEOs. That's MJ, who did the presentation, and then Dave Zisner, who is also the CFO. I said this before, MJ, even though she comes up through sales, she knows what she's doing. She knows how to command a team to go in the right direction. I have no problem with her being, you know, interim CEO at Intel. Because she's a powerhouse over there. And she understands product, and she understands what customers, especially the big OEM clients need. Dave, I like Dave, the CFO, who's also co-CEO, just because he's straight talking. Whenever I've had a conversation with him, whenever he's answered my questions, he's always been blunt. He's always been, you know, quick to point out Intel's own faults. In the conversation with Marvell CEO, one of the questions came up is, what advice would you give to the new Intel CEO? He said basically the CEO shouldn't be a corporate suit. It should be somebody who understands the business through and through. I did actually spend some time with MJ at CES. This was more of a...
Really, thank you, Patriot, in the chat. Check the Google Doc. Announced literally 10 minutes ago. Intel Capital to spin off of Intel into standalone venture firm or fund.
That would be why I got an email from Intel an hour and a half ago as we started the stream, and I didn't look at it. Independent second. Okay, let's share this. What are we on? MSN. Why it matters. Intel Capital is one of the oldest and most active corporate venture funds in Silicon Valley. It's invested $20 billion in That's really in 30 years. It's not that much. The group will become independent in the second half, at which point it will be renamed. Intel plans to remain a cornerstone investor, but the new firm will also solicit other commitments. Do we have the original Intel
PR? Let me grab that.
Yeah.
No, I have the business wire.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, paste it in the doc and I'll share.
Yep, done.
Okay. Share this tab instead. Okay. Can we get in? Okay. Separate Intel Capital into a standalone fund. Provide new sources of capital to expand its franchise. 5 billion in assets in management. Firm has created 170 billion market value. Standard operations are expected to begin under a new name. The existing Intel Capital team will move to the new company. So it doesn't say, oh, Intel will remain an anchor investor in the new company. So it sounds like Intel will retain somewhere between 10 and 50%. So, I mean, this is part of the risk mitigation, right? Intel needs to diversify its control in order to increase free cash for its aims. So, yeah, I did actually go to an Intel Capital event once. I was invited. Unfortunately, it was the 3 days before Hot Chips, and so my mind was focused solely on Hot Chips. But I could have written a massive article about what Capital were doing. So, yeah. Other than that, like I say, that was probably 2018. I never really had any contact with Intel Capital, so I just knew they existed and what have you. But I mean, this is Intel strategy, right? It's becoming Samsung. You have Samsung, the company, and then you have subsidiary, of which Samsung owns most of the subsidiary, or at least 51%. But actually, there are other investors. It's like Samsung Electronics is like 30% owned by somebody else, sort of thing. So I wouldn't worry too much. It's just Intel needing to do what Intel's needing to do. It is a bit weird, the fact that Pat's not at the helm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's as Radix said, also Altera. Yeah,
Altera was spun off last week.
But I mean, we knew about Altera for a while. I don't think they've mentioned who the initial investors or purchasers of Altera were. So
I don't believe so.
No. So I want to go into some questions, and I'll pull these up from the chat in the past. They've been curated. Cybot asks, do you think Nvidia GB10 will have a full assortment of compute types, including FP64?
So, again, that depends on, is this data center derived or client derived? If it's client derived, then I would expect all data types from FP32 all the way to FP4 being well supported, and FP64 being there just as to prevent seg faults in any programs that need FP64. If it's data center derived, then they could do like what AMD did back with the Radeon 7 and disable some of the FP64 compute, or keep all of it intact. Who knows at this point? They haven't released enough details to really solidify.
Well, they'll support block float, won't they? They should do, because it's backflow.
If it's data center, yes. Client, we don't know if it supports block float or not.
Because it's designed to be a dev kit for the big silicon, I have to assume it's data center. So
They haven't. I haven't gotten an answer on that yet.
Yeah. I know I asked literally for what are the physical dimensions, and Nvidia said, yeah, we're not releasing that now. Take a ruler next time, or calipers. Solar Reactor says we need. This is something that only works as a visual gag.
Yeah.
We need butter benching to present our products. Intern, butter, you say? Hold my beer. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Oh. Okay. Intel Capital is. I've got an email to read because clearly. Yeah. Where. Yeah, it came through at 8:14. I got a small heads up. So if you have any questions about Intel Capital, let me know. I can fire them off to people who may answer them, and I may be able to present to you in a future video. But yeah, let's make it a wrap there on our CES roundup. Unless you've got anything else to say, George.
No, I think I've said everything that I need to say.
Next events up for me, there is ISSCC end of February. There is also Mobile World Congress beginning of March.
I will hopefully be at ISCC, though I have a wedding on the 15th. So, or I have to go to a wedding on the 15th.
There may be some other events going on that week in the Bay Area as well. I need to check. But yeah, we will hopefully be here next week as well. I've got a relatively free week as it stands. So we'll have another Tech Routine next week. But thank you all for staying here for 2.5 hours, for staying tuned. I've been Potato.
And I've been Cheese.
And we'll catch you in the next one.
Have a good one, folks.